Going to be really interesting, that one. Tottenham against Chelsea this weekend. Normally, I come to you for the first answer, but it seems ridiculous when Glenn's sitting right there not to ask him the first question. First of all, just ahead of that game, we're going to get a real idea of where those two teams are, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we are, actually, Kelly. I think I know where Chelsea are. I've got to say that. I'm not quite sure where my old club are, as in Spurs, playing there for so many years. The performance and the result against Palace was poor. You've got to say that after 3 really good games, positive start. But Chelsea look awesome at the moment. I really do think they're the ones that are going to push City all the way. So I think it's going to be a tough afternoon for Spurs.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll have everyone fit, because if both teams put out their best sides, it's going to be a hell of a game still. But obviously you've got to look at Chelsea as favourites.
Yeah, Chelsea have looked really strong. The only points they dropped were against Liverpool at Anfield, down to 10 men for the second half of that game. And they've been able to get results in different ways. So Spurs then maybe are the best team to start with, because there's more to kind of try and work out with them.
What do you mean? What do you mean work out with Spurs?
In terms of where they are, in terms of what they can achieve, in terms of what their strengths and weaknesses are, everything.
Yeah, but what I saw in the Palace game with Spurs, especially when you say the weaknesses, they started with Winks, Højbjerg and Skip, and I'm thinking, where's the creativity? Harry Kane didn't have a shot or a touch in the box, and that is, for me, that's criminal. And so you're looking at what Spurs are doing, and even when I saw the games, what they've won, they kind of get the goal and they sit back. It feels very negative. It's not very Spurs, and I know that Son's not playing, you know what I mean? But I just felt like they just seem to be a bit stagnant.
I think the midfield, touching on that midfield might be okay for Chelsea on Sunday. It was good for City, but no disrespect, you're top of the league. That's what disappointed me. You're top of the league. It beat after 3 games. You're going to Palace, who haven't started well. Go there with a bit of swagger. Go there with a midfield that's got a bit of creativity. And go for the throat in many ways, but they look very timid, Tottenham, against Palace. And I couldn't work out why. Against the bigger teams, I could see that midfield actually working. So don't be surprised if that 3 doesn't play against Chelsea.
Like a counter-attacking?
Yeah, but if Son's fit as well, they'll have that pace and Moura and Kane. So I think it's not a bad, it's horses for courses in football sometimes from management's point of view.
I think they needed some Ndombele in that Palace game.
In that Palace game, I don't see that, that lad starting against Chelsea for sure. But I think they did that against City. They knew they wouldn't have the ball, so they needed actually against City to defend, to make their tackles, to be tight, and they went on the break. And I think that's what they're going to have to do against Chelsea. But Chelsea are a little bit cuter than that. I think they'll...
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. I think the problem is that I don't think Chelsea will come onto them the way Man City did and give them that chance to counter. I think they'll set up in a different way and they'll be more patient, I think. So almost they'll try and draw Tottenham out. Yeah. I think you're right, Glenn. I think they probably will go for a similar midfield. Yeah. And they've got a real issue, haven't they, in terms of creativity. The Ndombele issue comes up again, as it did with Mourinho. He wanted to go again this summer. Obviously, Nuno doesn't want him either, but who else have they got? I personally think Tottenham haven't recovered from selling Christian Eriksen. They haven't had a creativity gap. They've got a creativity gap ever since he's gone. They've never really solved that problem.
I think they've got too many players in that central midfield that hold the ball too long. You've got no one that can release it quickly, and that's where Kane and Son need quick releases of passes. They all want to hold on to the ball. Even Ndombele wants to hold the ball and create. Lo Celso, when he's in, does the same. And Eriksen, when he was playing at his best for Tottenham, played 2-3 touch sometimes, and he had a little bit with Harry Kane, that movement, and Dele Alli when he was playing well. A few years back now, that was the 3, that little triangle that really worked well. They haven't had that.
Hello and welcome to the show. We are in the anything in the fact that, look, there's never going to be a downside that Harry Kane has stayed at Spurs. But do you think that Nuno was preparing for a season without Harry Kane, and that maybe that's, I don't know, sort of affected his plans and his kind of template for the team?
Well, I think we were all expecting, once Harry came out like he did, we was all expecting that move to happen. So you'd have thought that Nuno is probably thinking, I'm going to have to maybe I have to start sorting my team out without Harry Kane in it. But surely once you get Harry Kane, once you get Harry Kane back in it, then you start catering for him. Totally agree with the gaffer in, you have to horses for courses. But if you've got Harry Kane playing in your team, you do have to cater for him, just like Harry Kane will cater for Son if Son's playing, because otherwise you're just wasting that talent. You're just wasting it.
Yeah, it's ironic that he didn't play against City when they got a fantastic result at the beginning of the season, and they hit. Son played down the middle that day, and what they did there is they squeezed right in. The three strikers went really central and allowed City to go on the outside. They didn't allow them to come through the centre of the pitch, and that was just for that game, that tactics against City. Whether they'll do that against Chelsea, I'm not so sure, because Chelsea play with the back three. But Harry Kane, I feel Jason and I were talking off air. I think he's in for a hard season. Yeah. Just mentally, from his point of view. I think he felt he was going to move to City. I just think mentally for him it's going to be a strain.
He's going to sit there and look at Lukaku scoring all these goals, enjoying himself at Chelsea. He's going to look at Ronaldo scoring all these goals at Manchester United. I just don't think he's going to get the chances to score. No. I think that's been the problem for him. It's going to be a very frustrating year for him. Yeah. I just don't think the opportunities will be there. I think we saw the game against Palace. He didn't get any touches in the box, never mind a shot. That's partly his responsibility as well, but, they're just not getting the opportunities to.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you mentioned, with strikers that he'll be looking at, if you've got, you have to, like the gaffer's saying that horses for courses, but then what happens then and you've got that, so you come up against Chelsea, like you come up against City, you have to play a different tactic, so then how do you score? How do you then get Harry Kane going?
I think Son in the team gives him other options, because he's good with Son. He makes and creates a lot for Son. Son does the same for him, and I think it's a big miss when when he's out of the team, which he was at Palace. He wasn't available. That's where that's where I think people like ngoáär and Bergwijn, people like that, have really got to come to the front. Yeah. ngoáär started very well actually this season. He's got ability. Whether he can do it consistently is the big question for Tottenham, because Harry does need some creation around him. Last year, he was scoring goals and creating himself. I don't think he can have another season like that. No. It'd be too much for him. Yeah,
there's that issue with him having to go and like Glenn said, make his own chances. And he's the player who's suffering most from that lack of creativity that you've pointed out.
And as a striker, I could say, listen, you're naturally thinking, I'm not getting the service, that's why it's not happening for me anyway. Yeah. But the fact is, he is somebody that, yes, you get... If you get Harry Kane in and around the ball, he will try and have his shot in that, but you do need to get the ball in and around him. And I think you're absolutely right as well when you say, Jace, about watching Lukaku, watching Ronaldo now. And there's nothing worse, for me, it's just pure jealousy, really. When you watch, like back in our day, you're watching Man United and you're watching those teams creating chance after chance, and you think to yourself, God, I wish I was playing for them. Because you're getting chances made. You look at something like Lukaku, he's hardly had touches in the games, but he's already got 4 goals in 6 games. And that's the difference with Chelsea, is that Chelsea can now, if it's really tight, they've got the person to take the half chance.
Also, as a striker, would you stop making movement then? When chances are not coming, you stop making runs.
His running stats are down.
You get frustrated.
You get despondent because you don't know when it's coming. Yeah. Of course, Harry Kane is like a major player in the team, and the players will give him the ball. But then, you start to think, well, I'm getting the ball here. I want the ball up there, and you're not getting it. You do get despondent. You do stop making runs, and then what you probably find is that he'll start taking shots from even more speculative places because he's not getting them frequently enough. You're
starting to look at the decision, however that came about, of Harry Kane and how he ended up staying at Tottenham. And you're starting to think this is not going to be great for Harry Kane's future either, let alone this season, because if he gets to the end of it and his numbers are down, he suddenly is a less attractive and a year older proposition.
I had a difficult summer. I've worked a lot on this story, and I know what it's sometimes like to do transfer stories around Tottenham with Daniel Levy, having done stories around Luka Modric and Gareth Bale. And actually I did an interview with Modric years and years ago when he first said he wanted to leave Tottenham, and within 12 hours there's a statement on the website, club website, saying he's going off my dead body from Daniel Levy.
Oh my gosh.
So that backfired quite badly.
It's nice to write a piece that gets a direct response.
Even when I was doing the interview, I was thinking, I'm not sure this is going to work. I was saying to him, I'm not sure, Luka, this is going to work. I honestly don't think this is going to work. But anyway, he went the year afterwards. I think it's a similar situation with Kane. I think they will let him go next year. But he wants to go this year, and that's the problem. And as Glenn's already touched on, and Ian as well, mentally he's out the door. You know, he's thinking he's going. He also knows Pep Guardiola really wants him, not just Manchester City. Pep Guardiola was driving this deal. He really, really wanted him. Okay, they didn't get it done. They couldn't get the negotiation. I think it's very difficult for him to then adjust. And we all talk about professionalism and he's the ultra professional and all this and all that. But it must, you guys know far more than me. It still must be hard to make that adjustment, to know you're going back from it. You've gone from a situation where you're the England captain who's going to be the main striker at Manchester City, the favourites to win the Premier League, one of the favourites for the Champions League, to go back to Tottenham and finish 7th or 8th, and then you're playing this new Conference League. It must be difficult. You know, it has to be.
The analogy, it's like a dream house. You dream home that you think you've got, and you've been gazumped at the last minute, and then you're going back to a house that you're not really happy with, and you're saying that's what could have been, and now I've got to live in the house I've been living in for 5 years that we're not being happy with. That's exactly what's happened to him. Mentally, it's the other players for me that Harry Kane's season will determine whether Moura steps up, whether Dele Alli starts creating for him, whether in the deeper part in the midfield where they get a creator in Dembele, or if he gets in the team. It's the other players, it's Bergwijn, it's those that have got to create for Harry. In the end, I can't see him having a similar season where he's got to create it himself off his own back and score and be an assist and then be Captain Marvellous and come back deep and start laying balls, in. He had a fabulous season last year, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that again.
I can only imagine. Because when you saw Harry Kane doing these interviews, talking about he's going to leave and that, he's thinking of trophies. He's thinking, I can't wait to play in that team with him and that. And so, I actually...
He'll have been talking to them as well on England duty, the likes of Raheem Sterling.
And the thing is, as well, Kels, is that like Jason said, he's out the door, and all he's thinking about is probably, I'm going to live, training's going to be like Pep and that. And so you go to that level of it's going to happen, and then bam, it doesn't happen. I don't know many people who have been in the position like that, because when a player of his caliber comes out and says, I'm going to go, I want to go, it normally happens. But for it to not happen, it's going to be interesting to watch him, because I can't remember too many times where a player's been in this position where it's that close and he's of that stature, Jace.
Well, I suppose you could say Ronaldo, when he first left Manchester United, he thought he was going the summer before, and he gave them one more year, didn't he? Thierry Henry gave Arsenal one more year.
But they didn't come out with the statement like he says, I want this done before the Euros.
No.
I'm going to, that
kind of... convinced him to stay.
Sorry, you're absolutely right, To go so public with it. Obviously, he chose his words carefully, but it's quite clear what he was saying. To go so public with it, in quite an aggressive way in many ways.
It was.
With that chairman, with Daniel Levy, we know that is almost like he'll just,
He'll just shut that down.
He'll shut that down. And also because, if you talk to people around Harry Kane, the reason why he did that is he absolutely genuinely believed, rightly or wrongly, he had a promise that he'd go. Now, call him naive, whatever, gentleman's agreement, was it the price ever right, so on and so forth. He absolutely, 100% thinks he had an agreement that he'd go if the terms were right, but not the terms, obviously, that Daniel Levy never told him what the terms were. That's part of the problem.
It's all right saying I'll let you go, but there wasn't stipulation of what season you're going to go or what time you're going to go.
Kane saying he was told he could go this summer if they didn't win a trophy or finish in the top 4. He's adamant about that. Now, Daniel Levy's version of events is slightly different, obviously, and he said he could go to a foreign club, basically, if the terms are right. Now, that's not what Harry Kane believes was said to him. So there was a difference there of opinion.
And it's not as though Spurs and City are direct rivals anyway. So there's but it's going to be very different targets for them this season. Daniel Levy may see that differently.
If you're Tottenham, you can't say they're not direct rivals, because that's the lack of ambition around Tottenham. And you also got to remember Daniel Levy's been under a huge amount of pressure in the last year. Going back to even things like furloughing staff. That went down badly. The European Super League. He's under a lot of pressure. And bizarrely, he's come out of the summer
pretty good,
more popular in a way with Tottenham than Kane, which is really weird, just because he dug his heels in.
Yeah, the PR battle around that has been fascinating to watch it unfold. I was interested in the point you made earlier about Harry Kane, and I wanted to ask you, Glenn, about the fact that he is seen as this model professional who trains hard, who puts all the effort in. I'm just wondering about if his mental state is different across this season, how much of a drop-off we might see in his performances, even if he does everything else exactly by the book.
I think it's only human nature after the things we've just been saying. It'd be Superman if it hasn't affected him mentally. And you can see that already in his play. The Palace game, what we've just seen, I'm not sure he's chomping on the bit to cover every blade of grass, get in the box, hurt himself, get goals. For me, watching the game, I was looking at him. Is he having a go at his players? Is he saying there's not creation? He wasn't really actually communicating with that many players, which is a problem. That's one thing Harry will always do. And I'm looking at him from a different, not what he was doing on the pitch, not if he would pass the ball wrong or he wasn't getting in the box. It was his demeanour, it was his mentality that I think is going to make it a very difficult season for him. Can he then switch it on when he goes to England? That's very difficult as a professional as well. So I hope that the other players around him start creating and giving him opportunities. I think a lot of Harry's season will be his teammates, how they perform, and they've got to step up. They've got to step up to him. They've got to get closer to his levels, to his approach every day, for him as a player pushing himself. I don't see that enough with those players at Tottenham at the moment. And if they can do that, the talent's in there. Son has obviously done that, he can do it, but there's others there like ngoáär. They're better than what they've shown in a Spurs shirt, and they've got to become more consistently. If that happens, Spurs could surprise everyone this year and get Harry scoring and whatever. But I do think there's a bit of a question mark about it all.
Is this what Nuno can do at Tottenham? Because at Wolves, although in highlights they would look very exciting, very dynamic, there were large portions of their games that were very steady.
But it's a completely different job. I mean, he brought Wolves into the Premier League. It was about consolidation, being in the Premier League. Everything was new, everything was exciting. The football was good at times, but wasn't great at other times. It's a different proposition completely. The expectation is far greater. You're going to have to perform and not just get results. And I think also the fact is, let's be honest, and not that it really matters in many ways, but he was far from first choice. And if you look at the statement that was made by Daniel Levy when Jose Mourinho left, it was a change of direction. We're going to play more exciting football. We're going to get back to the way that Tottenham usually play. Blah, blah, blah. Well, they haven't. Nuno is very similar to Mourinho. He's a very similar manager. He's of that mould. He's a disciple of Mourinho. You know, he played for Mourinho. You know, he knows Mourinho. It's a very similar character. Now, obviously, you've got to get a manager in, and he's obviously a good manager, so it's not a terrible appointment, but he wasn't the manager. If you look at they went through the card, didn't they? Yes. You know, you go from Nagelsmann, Conte, everyone you could think of was on that list, all different types of managers. So they didn't really have a template to go for. So you look at Nuno, yes, I think they'll do fine this season. I think fine, but is fine good enough? And I don't think fine is good enough for something like Harry Kane, and I think the football could become a bit difficult at times. And 3-1-0 wins are good, and he wins Manager of the Month, fantastic, but they give up a lot of chances in those games. 3-1-0 wins, it wasn't champagne football. Not that you'd expect after some of they've had. So I think it's very much in the balance which way this will go with Tottenham. I
think, what's quite important as well, I know the North London derby coming up as well, it's the kind of game that everything can balance on. Harry Kane can maybe get himself going if he nicks a couple of goals in it. But if they play, I saw them play against Palace and Arsenal, and Arsenal can beat them in that game, then I think that everything starts to ramp up for Spurs. I think that if Arsenal don't win and then they go into that game and they don't win that game, it's such an integral game for both sets of, for the two clubs, and then Arsenal fans are going to start to go a funny way simply because of how important that game is. A lot can happen in that game, and I think now that game's got so much say in what's going to happen now, that Arsenal-Tottenham derby. I think it's brilliant now.
Well, I think it has, but I also think this weekend's got a big... If Spurs were to go and beat Chelsea, then going into that North London derby, it's a different prospect.
Yeah, but then, Gaffer, if they go into that game and we see, like you say, they might play with that midfield and they might be a bit more resolute in the way they're defending, and then Chelsea still unlock them and they don't play a brand of football where the Tottenham fans see them at least trying. You know what the Tottenham fans could be like. Yeah. And then you go into the Arsenal game, and then I start to feel like the pressure could mount on Nuno very quickly.
You've just shot me down completely.
You know what? It's literally winning against Chelsea. Gav, it's just literally all coming to my head as I'm thinking the North London derby coming, and it's vitally important to us to win the game, and it's going to be vitally important to Tottenham to win it. I think there's going to be so much more on it.
Yeah, it does feel like a tipping point moment for Tottenham, particularly over the next couple of games.
Well, in Arsenal, Ian's absolutely right. It's ironic that the two clubs are going through hell at the moment a little bit, and it's Chelsea and West Ham that were above them in the London League, if you like. So that hasn't been like that for many, many years. And this is a big sort of season for both clubs, but this fixture always comes in early in the season, this fixture, one way or the other, whether it's at Tottenham or Arsenal. And there is, psychologically, for the fans, for the clubs, for everything, the owners, it's a massive game, bigger than normal, I think, just for this moment in time, to see what, it's almost like the aura of the club, the feel from the fans, the energy around the clubs. Whoever loses that game is in for a few more problems weeks after.
Yes.
And that's probably why it'd be a draw.
But look, ahead of this game against Chelsea coming up for Tottenham, you know better than anybody about the brand of football that Tottenham fans want to see, because you delivered it for them. When Jose Mourinho was there were times when it looked very successful, when he did get results, certainly for that period at the beginning. But there were no fans in the ground. There were no fans to lose patience with that style. Could that be an issue for Nuno, do you think?
Yes, it will do, particularly with any set of fans. Spurs are demanding like anyone else. Arsenal are the same, wherever you go. But I think it was easier for managers without, particularly the way. I mean, early in the season, Mourinho banked up against Manchester United at home. I remember it, and then they hit him on the break, got a goal. There was other games where they were banking in, and it was tight, but they won matches. There was nobody in the stadium. Spurs fans wouldn't have stood for that, particularly when the game was in its balance and it was like things weren't going, one way or the other. That's when the restlessness of fans affect the players on the pitch. We've gone through sort of almost like 18 months, maybe more, I don't know, of not having that effect on players. A lot of players have enjoyed playing with no crowd.
Yeah, definitely.
The top players want to play with that.
A lot of managers really enjoyed it. Obviously, they've really enjoyed it.
But a lot of them, you give a bad ball away and you've got your own crowd getting on your back.
Even if you hear a little, that's
exactly.
enough sometimes for you. That's enough for you.
It depends if it's a sympathetic. And players, we're all aware of that when we were playing. And that has an effect on a player. And then you've got to respond. Do you go searching for the ball still? If you don't, then your team's capacity of playing goes down. But if there's no crowd and you it's okay for you to. So that the definition is so different with the crowd in. Positive, look at Liverpool like last night in Europe. It was an amazing atmosphere. They're like the 12th man up there. Yeah. But it can go against you. Look at West Ham. Yeah. Last year they enjoyed no crowd in. They were brilliant, because they didn't have that sort of pressure from their own fans when it wasn't going so well, and that's what Nuno.
That's factored now. That's back in.
It's back. It's back there, and it's down to the players to perform under those normal circumstances.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens there.
Yes.
But and also, as you correctly pointed out, a good start to the season in terms of result for Spurs. Nuno, manager of the month, and we're saying it could be tricky for him.
I think it's partly because we all looked at those three results and thought, great results. Haven't conceded a goal, 3 clean sheets, 3 wins, but didn't quite feel right to me. It wasn't like it was a little bit of an illusion, really, in many ways, after this, and understandably so after the summer they'd had. So I thought it was almost it was a correction a little bit last weekend. It was a poor performance, so I went too far the other way. But now we're wondering, as Glenn was saying, which way will it go? We just don't know. We're looking at it thinking, this could go either way, really could go either way for him. It could very, very quickly go downhill here. Yes. Or it could go again. They could improve. He could get his ideas across, and Kane could start scoring, and Son back in, and it could be fine, because he'll organise them and he'll make them difficult to beat. But it just could be quite a tough watch.
Well, that's the problem. What I think that he'll have, because he'll make them tough to beat and they'll be organised. And like we saw, from them to go from the 3 winning games and then they go to Palace and it just looks so bad.
Yes.
Because remember, when Tottenham under Mourinho without the fans, the Tottenham fans were still saying, we don't like the way we play. I don't like what we're doing. So with Nuno, and then starting with 3 good games, and then playing like they did against Palace, I think the Chelsea game, we talked about the Tottenham game and Arsenal game, but I think the Chelsea game and the way they perform in that game is going to be really important to him and the fans, because I think they're looking for something, especially with that poor performance against Palace, that's going to make them say, right, OK, we're with you or something, because it just feels a little bit like with the Tottenham fans, my mates, they're just like, they like that gaffer, they're simmering. They're like, we better do something against Chelsea.
I guess the only other thing you'd say, to be fair to Nuno, is the summer signings, he hasn't had a chance with them yet, has he? I mean, obviously Romero, we haven't seen him.
That's right.
Brian Hill, we haven't really seen much of him either. So, you've got to give him a bit of a chance there, really. You know, he's been dealt a difficult hand in terms of those sorts of issues, and even with the quarantine of Sanchez and so on. You know, it's been difficult.
Yeah.
You know, so I think from that point of view, if I was a Tottenham fan, I would cut him a bit more slack from that. But I think if you look at that team that played against Palace on Saturday, that's not the team he wants to put out. I would have thought, you know, defensively especially, that's not the team he wants to put out.
But it was the chalk and cheesiness of it all. Man City, I was in the stadium, the atmosphere, the positivity, the work rate that they put in, which you have to put in the hard yards against City, was immense. And then you see that performance against Palace. That is chalk and cheese. It was motorways away from where they were, drop off. Yeah. So that's what concerned me as a Spurs man. And to get beat from a side who are lacking in confidence, 3-0, not 1-0, you know, not only a lucky goal. That concerned me, and I think that would concern Nuno as well. It's important. They play again today in Europe, in the European competition. They've got to get another win under their belt if they can, before they go into Sunday. No, that's my concern. The inconsistent levels of those two performances are miles apart, and as a manager, you've got to narrow that.
Yes.
Yeah.